Am I the a-hole for not going by my dad's because he always sides with his girlfriend and her daughter? My parents split custody. It's pretty random. Some days I'm home and sometimes I'm by my dad. I'm 15 female. Dad started dating Jane a while ago. Maybe a year. She has a daughter, Mandy, that's 12 or 13, I think. Then they started spending a lot of time at my dad's. They have their own apartment, but they're still always by him. The first time they stayed over when I was there and somehow Mandy ended up in my bed. Her mom has this cot/bed thing she brought to my dad's for her. But somehow I woke up in the middle of the night and she was in my bed. I kicked her out. Then my dad and Jane said that was mean, and I have a fool anyway, so I should share. There's other stuff. I have a chair in my dad's living room I got as a gift. It's comfy, and when I move out, it'll go with me. Well, Mandy always wants to race for the chair. Even when I win the race, my dad makes me let her sit in it because they're guests. So I ended up sitting on the floor because my dad has a recliner, and Jane lays across the couch. So I stay in my room instead. My dad's tried getting me to come out there by then, but why would I have to sit on the floor like a dog? He keeps saying I'm being a difficult teenager, but that's not it though. One time my mom and I went and did some stuff before she dropped me off. She had bought me a blanket that had my favorite team's logo on it. I was excited to sleep with it. Stupid, I know. So she let me take it to my dad's. My dad made me share it with Mandy because it wasn't fair that I got something and Mandy didn't. It's not just the blanket it's happened with. It's anything that I have to share. But if Mandy has something I'd like to use, it tells me it's hers, and if she doesn't want to let me, she doesn't have to. One time Mandy was reading one of my books, and Jane and my dad started fighting. Jane wanted to leave, so Mandy wanted to take my book. But I said no, so she wouldn't leave. My dad yelled at me to just let her have it. They made up, so I got it back, but if they didn't, I would have lost one of my favorite books. My dad and I had plans to go ice fishing. Just him and I, something we've done since I was 7. Well, he brought Jane and Mandy along. All they did was complain. It's too cold. Fish are gross. This is boring. So we left early and he just said, sometimes you have to compromise. When I got home, I was mad. My mom was annoyed and called him and they argued. And he talked to me and repeated his compromising BS. I was supposed to go back to him a few days later, but I decided I didn't want to. I never even spent time with just him anymore anyway, so what's the point in going there? I told my mom, she said it was my choice. So I told him, and he said, I'm just used to being an only child and I can't be spoiled my whole life, and that I can't run away whenever there's a problem. Well, since then, his family is trying to get me to go back too. Am I the a-hole for not visiting my dad anymore? Am I the a-hole for telling my sister to stop acting as if my fiancé were her son's dad? My 24 female sister, 23 female, had my nephew Joe during her first year in college. The father is absent in his life and only pays child support. She has always hated the idea of my nephew growing without a father figure. And since our only brother is 17 and our dad passed away 10 years ago, she dated recklessly for a while and introduced him to a bunch of dudes. 3 years ago, I met my now fiancé, Gabriel, 28 male. He's really sweet and adores my family. He's financially stable and is good with kids. Has a bunch of nephews on his own and comes from a good, big family. We've decided to be child-free. And if something happens to my sister and a few of Gabe's siblings, we're meant to be their legal guardians. But for the past year, my sister has grown comfortable with pushing Joe around Gabe. She always invites him to my nephew's activities, which is fine, but she acts as if Gabe were her guest and I'm his +1, not otherwise. Plus, my brother used to be the one who got invited and he's not anymore. She asks Gabe to drive her and Joe to places, and my mom pointed out how they look like a family when he does it. She jokes about how much of a dad Gabriel is for Joe, and she had the audacity to ask him once if he was comfortable with adopting Joe. But she was drunk, so I'll give her that. Neither Gabe or I are comfortable with this. He doesn't know how to push it aside without hurting their feelings. Mom has told my sister countless times how this is inappropriate. But my sister always gets defensive and says that Joe chose him and it's not her fault. Things blew up last weekend when Joe asked Gabriel if he could call him dad, because Mom said it was fine. My sister was looking at them with the biggest smile on her face, and I could notice how my mom and my brother were expecting his answer. Neither of them agree with it too. He sat Joe on his knee and kindly explained him how he wasn't his dad or even a dad figure, that he was Anne's soon-to-be husband. and that made him his favorite uncle. That even if he wasn't his dad, he would never leave him and they'll always be best friends. Joe, being the sweet kid he is, laughed and smiled and said that it was okay. Then he ran to the living room to play with something. I think the situation resolved itself just fine, but my sister didn't like it and started to fight with us. My mom kept telling her to shut up, but she was saying things like, "What's wrong with you two? How can you say no to a little kid? He sees you as a father, so you should be proud of that." I had enough. But I told her that Gabriel wasn't Joe's dad, and that she needed to stop acting as if he was because it was honestly embarrassing. She called me a selfish C-word and said that I was jealous of her kid. I just rolled my eyes and we decided to leave after her. She later sent me a text saying that it was best if we step out of Joe's life for a while, or we will end up confusing him because he doesn't understand that Gabriel is not daddy. But as far as I could see, he got it pretty well. Edited to Ed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that we're already Joe's legal guardians, but if something happens to my sister, and we hope it never does, we'll be taking care of him. Also, my sister is not right. I agree with that, but I doubt she ever gets violent. Am I the a-hole for telling my stepsister that we're not friends and putting my mom in a catch-22? My 17 female mom moved her fiancé in last year. Not really a fan of the guy, but my dad lives overseas, and my mom cried and kicked up a fuss when I floated the idea of going to live with him. So she promised that if I stayed, my stepdad would have no say over me, and I just had to be polite. Fair. He has 2 daughters, May 17 female and June 15 female. June is fine, we vibe. May's in my grade at school, and the best way to describe her is you'd grown a little if you were told to do a group project with her. She's awkward, not very good in school, and really sensitive about everything. She doesn't have any friends that I know of. So when our parents started talking marriage, May latched onto me like a freaking lamprey, and I can't seem to get her off my back. Before they moved in, I could mostly avoid her at school. She's in lower level classes than me. She kept trying to add and message me on SM, and I just didn't respond. Now that they've moved in, she's just always there, trying to be involved with everything I do, talking my ear off and getting in the way. I train a lot every day for my sports, and since she's not in a very good shape, the parents suggested she go to the gym with me since she expressed an interest. She pestered me the whole time about how to use the equipment and was totally worn out and ready to go when I was only a fourth the way done. I finally had it last weekend when I had a friend over after training to game for a bit, and May invited herself into my room with us without asking. I told her I wouldn't invite her to hang out and to leave, that she was being rude. She started crying and complained to her dad, who came in and told us to let her play. I reminded him that he can't tell me to do anything for my mom, and to take it up with her, which pissed him off. Later, we all had heavy talk and he said I was bullying May, but I told him that May is the one who inserts herself where she's not invited nor wanted. She's not my friend and she's not going to be, so I'd rather she butt out for the few months left until I leave home. My mom is upset because she's in the middle, and stepdad is making noises about breaking up if she doesn't discipline me. I've told her if she caves, I'm not coming back here while he lives here once I'm out. May has been being a drama queen and crying about it to the point that even June told her to shut up. My mom says May is just sensitive and lonely, but I don't see how that's my problem to fix.
Me, 31 male European, with my girlfriend, 29 female Chinese, of 1 year, very different cultural expectations of financial management. My girlfriend and I are coming up on the 1 year mark of our relationship, and that's brought with it some conversations about our futures and our future together. Something that came to light in a casual discussion was that we have completely different expectations of how financial and household management would and should work. I think that we should be contributing equally and get an equal say in financial decisions. This probably wouldn't be too easy, and we would both need to work hard to accept compromises. She has a simpler plan. She should be 100% in control of everything. Her view would be that I would reroute my paychecks into an account in her name, and she would pay all bills out of that, and I might be given an allowance. This isn't the first time she's brought up this idea. It was mentioned very casually about 6 months ago. I assumed that it was some sort of joke because it was just too ludicrous to believe. She's angry with me now for disagreeing with this plan because she says we've talked about it, and because I didn't object, that meant I agreed. Her point of view is that this is just how marriages work in China. It's how her parents divorced acrimoniously did it, and she can't imagine any other way. My point of view is that marriage should be a partnership, and we should be looking for a compromise as equitable as possible. I won't be giving up 100% of my financial freedom under any circumstances. I'm not Chinese and we're not in China. Also, she's more than happy to adopt Western standards for things that suit her. I also have another concern. She feels she needs to send money home to support her parents in retirement. This is another cultural difference that I'm having trouble accepting. My parents are lower middle class, have worked their entire lives with their eyes on retirement savings, and are now approaching retirement with good pensions. My girlfriend's parents, who I have not met, seem to be very well off. One is a pediatric surgeon and the other owns a successful business. But from what my girlfriend has told me, they're very far from frugal and don't have any retirement plans beyond having their daughter send them money in support. I'm not crazy about the idea of using our money, which should be supporting our family and future, to prop up their lifestyles. Right now, we seem to be at an impasse. She won't even discuss any arrangement other than the one that she's envisioned, and I'm unwilling to compromise on the need for compromise. Does anyone have experience of similar cultural clashes who might be able to offer guidance?
Am I the a-hole for asking my in-laws to choose between me and a daughter they never had? I, 30 female, have been married to my husband, 38 male, for 9 years, and I have a long history of conflict with a woman named Sally, who used to be my husband's best friend. The trouble started right after my husband and I started dating. He had a best friend, let's call her Sally, who he now realizes he had an inappropriate relationship with. I got hateful messages after we started dating about how I stole him from her and how toxic I was. The next conflict was a couple of years later. She separated from her husband and turned to my husband for comfort. In the end, I found out after we moved back to the area, she was lying to us about everything she said happened that ended her marriage, and I confronted her saying I didn't appreciate being lied to. Sally started telling people that I was in love with her ex-husband, and that is why I took his side with everything. That was the final straw for me. I went to mother-in-law and put down a boundary that I wanted no contact with Sally. Eventually, after about a year of minimal contact had passed, my mother-in-law started pressuring me to let things go and start attending family functions again when Sally was going to be there. I told my mother-in-law that I would be willing to attend events where Sally was likely to be, but I would not socialize with Sally. As soon as that happened, I can only assume my mother-in-law told Sally about the change, because she started reaching out to my husband saying I miss our friendship that we used to have. Recently, I received an anonymous email saying some really harsh things. I assumed this was some random person trolling me, but we looked up the IP address and it came from the area Sally lives. The email referenced my private Facebook group, my first and middle name, and was from her area. She is the only person who I have ever had this kind of a hateful situation with, so I can only assume it was from her. I decided to have a conversation with my mother-in-law and father-in-law about going zero contact with Sally, not even accidental contact, and it went terribly. It ended up with us basically telling my in-laws that they needed to decide who they wanted at a family function and tell the other party that they could not come. My mother-in-law insisted again that she wished my husband could just be friends with Sally again even if I wanted to stay away from her, and that it would fix all the problems that has been happening. I reminded her again about all the things Sally had said to me, and my mother-in-law said she still didn't believe it was true, and kept saying Sally's like a daughter to us. She is family, and she would never do those things. My father-in-law refuses to even participate in these conversations. He just gets up and walks away because he refuses to hear a bad word about Sally. I am left wondering, am I the a-hole here? Am I the a-hole for defending my grandmother's decision to put me in her will and life insurance as main beneficiary? I, 30 female, have always been really close to my grandma. Even when my aunts and cousins lived with her, we would spend time together, just the two of us. Originally, it was because my own mother, her daughter, was very neglectful of me. But as I got older, we both realized we had a lot in common. I got emancipated at 16, and my grandma was my biggest supporter. As soon as I was able to, I returned the favor and helped her out with whatever she needed. Grocery shopping, yard work, deep cleaning her house. She has very poor eyesight, so can't drive. And after my grandpa died, she needed help. None of my family, aunt, her kids, uncle and his kids, mom and my younger sibling, stepped up. My grandma recently got into an accident. She needed surgery and almost died. Now that she's home and doing better, albeit needs more help than before, she decided to update her will. Originally, the will had half of her money and assets being split between her 3 children, another half split between me, my sibling, and my 4 cousins. She changed it to me and my children receiving about 80%, and the rest of the family splitting the remaining 20%. Obviously, my family's pissed. My mom and me just recently started repairing our relationship, and now she's refusing to talk to me. My aunt calls me daily and accuses me of manipulating a frail old woman, and even went as far as making a report to Adult Protective Services, saying I'm stealing. I defend myself, saying Grandma changed her will and life insurance while of sound mind, and that is her choice. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I wanted to add, I recently got a settlement of child support from my bio father, and my family thinks that I stole that money from my mother. And both this situation and that one proves that I'm manipulating my family for money. I got the child support instead of my mother because I was neglected, and then in and out of foster care before getting emancipated. Grandma was the only person who advocated for me, but couldn't take me in as a child because of her health. Am I the a-hole for telling my mother-in-law that she will never see my child? Not really my mother-in-law, but girlfriend's mom. My girlfriend Ella and I have been together for almost 4 years now, and we are expecting our first child later on this year. Ella's 5 months pregnant. As much as I love Ella, I cannot stand her family, especially her mother. From the stories I've heard and from my own experiences with her mother seems to be an extremely disrespectful person. Because of her attitude, Ella has significantly cut contact with most of her family. We also didn't really tell them that we were pregnant, but they found out through Ella's cousin. Upon hearing about Ella's pregnancy, Ella's mom has been pestering us about inviting us to dinner to congratulate and celebrate our growing family. It's a nice gesture, but I was hesitant to accept because of the way that she and the rest of Ella's family usually act. After almost a month of ignoring the invitation, Ella convinced me to take her up on it. The dinner was held at a very expensive, very fancy fine dining restaurant. At first, to my shock, the dinner was going well. Ella's mom apologized for her past behavior and stated that she wanted to be a good grandmother moving forward. Her sister also offered support in the form of babysitting, old baby clothes, etc. The conversation was friendly, and I was very surprised to not hear anything insulting from Ella's mom directed at Ella. When Ella stepped out to use the washroom, Ella's sister made a comment about her supposed weight gain and offered me diet plans and exercise regimen to prevent her from getting too chunky. Her mom also pitched in about Ella's greedy eating habits. Just to be clear, my girlfriend isn't big. She's very tall and lanky, and even if she was the biggest woman in the universe, their comments would still be unacceptable. Ella's mom and sister also asked me not to tell Ella about our conversation because she's apparently too sensitive. At this point, I wanted to leave. Once Ella came back, I announced that I wanted to leave the dinner early. Her family was surprised and asked me why, and I responded that I didn't see them fit to see my child and I wouldn't want to see them ever again. I was probably very impolite, but in that moment, I didn't care. Her mom was very upset, almost yelling in the restaurant about how I couldn't leave without paying their bill, as I was the man of the table, and how I couldn't make husband demands as a boyfriend. Meaning, I can't forbid a grandmother from seeing her child because I'm not a true family. Again, I didn't care and I left with Ella. I later found out that Ella's mom's card was declined and they were forced to phone a friend to bring some money. Very embarrassing. Ella thinks that I could have been less harsh, because now her sister is spreading rumors about her to the family. Am I the a-hole for refusing to pay my brother-in-law for babysitting my daughter? I, 34 male, have a 5-year-old daughter. My wife is deceased and my in-laws are my only supporters. Some days ago, I had an appointment with a dentist, and the babysitter who was supposed to watch my daughter called and canceled. I didn't know what to do, so I called my brother-in-law asking if he was willing to watch his niece till I get back from the appointment. He said he wasn't sure since he had a couple of tutoring sessions to get done. I told him to skip and I dropped my daughter off at his apartment then left. When I came back to pick her up in the evening, brother-in-law asked me to pay him for watching my daughter for 4 hours. I was taken aback and asked if he was serious. He reminded me that he had 2 tutoring sessions that he had to cancel last minute. And since I pushed him to stay with my daughter and watch her, then I need to pay him. I refused and said he was being somewhat greedy and an opportunist to even think sitting his knees would grant him easy money. He said it wasn't easy money but time wasted in his very busy schedule. We had an argument and I left with my daughter. He called my in-laws who said that he was in the right and I should have paid him for his time and be appreciative of his efforts. I told them I didn't expect him to ask for money, but they said it's what I do with babysitters. Well, yes, but he's family, and last thing I expect from him is to ask for money for staying with his niece. Besides that, I had an emergency and couldn't miss the appointment knowing how hard it is to get another one. He's still insisting on being paid, but I keep refusing him. At this rate, I think he's being ridiculous, but I don't know. It all seems to be a misunderstanding. Say I did pay him. This would set the precedence for him to keep expecting money every time. Am I the a-hole for not paying him? Am I the a-hole for saying I told you so when my wife got banned from seeing our grandson? My wife has been in constant contact with our daughter-in-law, our son's wife, about plenty of things. The very recent argument ensued after my wife kept insisting on being present in the delivery room despite getting a resounding no. My wife was having none of it, and my son and his wife changed hospitals to throw my wife off after she threatened to barge into the room. She eventually found out I didn't tell her and got very mad. I told her to stop and think, because if she keeps this up, she will lose all chances to see her grandbaby. She told me off and went to make a huge scene at a hospital my daughter-in-law was at. It did not end well, and my wife came home crying hysterically after getting chewed out by our son and kicked out of the hospital. Things remained tense till my son called to invite me to see the baby for the first time. He did not invite my wife, which sent her into a mental breakdown. I had an argument with her after she tried to guilt me into staying with her and shame my son for keeping his mom away from her grandbaby. But I just told her I told you so and said that she had plenty of opportunities to get right with our daughter-in-law, but she blew them away because of her stubbornness. She started yelling about how unsupportive and cruel I was, just like our son to be siding against her instead of defending her, and staying home with her when our son banned her from meeting our grandbaby. I went anyway, and she kept arguing about me taking the wrong side instead of defending her. I feel bad for her, but at the same time, I think that she was being irrational and made this a competition, despite knowing how our son and his wife felt about her behavior.
Trigger warning, a gap.
Trigger warning, knife use.